right, hello everyone. Welcome to our student media press conference. My name is Alyssa Anderson and I'm a news editor for the PSU Vanguard.
And my name is Shaelee Singer and I am a contributor for the Pacific Sentinel.
And we're joined here today by President Cudd to talk about some issues that students care about. We'll start today's conference with some remarks from President Cudd and then questions compiled by both of our teams, and end with some questions submitted by students, alumni, and family of students. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And without further ado, President Cudd, I guess you have some remarks to share with us.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here. It's great to be with the Vanguard and with the Pacific Sentinel here in the sub-basement doing this student media presentation, which I understand is a new kind of presentation, and it's really great to be able to reach a lot of students. So I hope everyone is feeling well prepared as we head into finals week fairly soon, and I can't believe that the winter term's almost already over. It's been a good winter term for me, other than that big ice storm, which I was not ready for, to be honest. But I just wanted to share with you a few of my top priorities and what I've been spending my time on while all of you have been pursuing your studies and doing your work to keep the campus informed. So first, I want to talk a little bit about strategic planning and the budget. One of my top priorities as the PSU's president is positioning the future to do right by the students now and into the future. And we're midway through a process of developing a comprehensive strategic plan that will guide our decision making. We need strategic imperatives that can map back to our core values as an institution and help us to remain a strong and thriving institution into the future. So my goal, first of all, is to build a more transparent and inclusive decision-making environment at PSU and to make the difficult decisions that we need to make as an institution to be successful. The university, as you may know, is operating at a deficit right now, and we can't continue to do that indefinitely. So we're going to have to make some difficult decisions. And we need input in order to do that well. That's another reason I'm really glad that I'm here today to speak with all of you. I also want to acknowledge that for many in our community, the campus environment has been very difficult to navigate this year. As the heartbreaking war in the Middle East has continued, emotions are understandably very close to the surface. We're human, and we can't witness death and destruction without it taking its toll. My goal has always been that students and staff and faculty as well, no matter their background, can feel safe on our campus and can find belonging and feel that they can pursue their education free from fear or harassment. Not everyone has felt that way this year, which is why I formed the Building Community Through Dialogue Task Force to address the areas where there's friction on campus and find solutions. So that task force has 4 subcommittees. One is on violence prevention and response, which is meant to ensure that all members of the campus community are physically safe and free from violence. The second is climate and psychological safety, which is to promote a campus climate that provides emotional and psychological support to the members of the campus community, and especially those who are experiencing pain or fear or instability in their lives. And the third group is the intergroup dialogue and engagement group, which is meant to forge new opportunities for learning across culture, across faith and identity and experience. And then the fourth is the Academic Freedom Committee, which is to ensure academic freedom while also safeguarding students' civil rights under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So I'm really grateful for the students who've stepped up to participate in this task force, and I look forward to sharing results from the task force with the community as we go forward. And I also welcome any of your ideas on how we can improve our campus environment through dialogue. And finally, I wanted to make sure you're aware of that this winter and spring term, I'm hosting the Presidential Speaker Series to learn from the best in the country about how to be a better minority-serving institution. As you know, our student body is quickly becoming a majority BIPOC student body, and we're acting quickly to learn how to thrive as Oregon's most diverse university. We're inviting university presidents from around the country, from other minority-serving institutions, to come and share best practices with us. Our third speaker is Frank Arpan, who's the president of Haskell Indian Nations University, which I know well from living in Lawrence, Kansas myself. He will arrive on campus next Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the Smith Ballroom. And in May, we'll gather everyone who wants to participate in that conversation to make meaning of what we've learned along the way and what new practices we should adopt at Portland State to better serve all of our students. So I hope you can join in this effort, and I would like to hear from you. So with that, I will stop filibustering and let you ask me questions.
Yeah. So can you talk about how your second year as president is going and some changes you have seen at the university? So what positive changes have you facilitated and what areas are in need of improvement?
So first, let me make it clear, I'm only 7 months into my presidency, so I'm not yet into the second year. Second term, though, you're right, the second term of the year. And I think, mainly what I've been doing up to this point is really doing a listening tour and trying to learn from folks and trying and engaging with the strategic planning steering committee as well as with the campus in our campus forums to really hear what the community thinks that we do best, what the future needs from PSU, and how we can move forward really productively. So the listening tours, I've been to each of the colleges as well to hear what they feel like they do best, to hear about their programs. And that's been, sort of my main work in my first 6 months of being in office. Of course, as I just talked about, there are a few priorities, the budgeting, strategic planning, the speaker series, as well as the task force. Those have been the main things that I've seen going. I should also mention that it's been really important to me to make sure that our campus is becoming more and more vital and vigorous. We're still coming out of the pandemic. And that's certainly true for the city as well. So I've been pleased to see more activity on campus, more vitality, more in-person meetings. I'm glad to see that this is an in-person interview as well.
All right. In a recent article that you wrote, you stated that Portland State student demographics are changing, reflecting the changing demographics of our nation. Can you talk a little bit about what this means for the university and why this is an important step for our community?
Mm-hmm. Yes, as I mentioned, we are becoming a majority BIPOC institution. That is to say, to be clear, it's the undergraduates that have now just barely passed the 50% range. But anyway, I see the demographics changing in the nation and also on our campus, although I believe that our demographic is even more diverse than the city of Portland itself. And as I talk to industries and other employers around, they are really eager for a diverse talent pipeline. And we need to have a diverse student body in order to be a really exciting, innovative, creative group of scholars and students. So I think that's one of those are among the reasons it's really important for us to become a more diverse campus.
Mm-hmm. I guess, so during the strategic planning meeting, when you gave those demographics, people noticed that you left out the number of white students completely. What do you think that communicates to students when something like that is done?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. It might have been was it a slide or was it a statement? There are 49.5% white students, white identified students in the undergraduate student body.
Okay.
So just to be clear.
All right.
Okay. International students in programs like IELP play a significant role in the minority population of the university, yet they are historically undersupported group of students. How do you plan to better support this population, especially given the university's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah, unfortunately, our international student population has been declining since 2015. That is also a national trend more recently since the pandemic. And, we value our international students greatly. They add diversity, they add, cultural, different kinds of cultural backgrounds. And it's just great to have students from all over the world. So we'll continue to support those students. We'll continue to embrace them and hope that they continue to come. We, it is unfortunate that the numbers are dropping, but that's really not our intention.
Well, could you explain how you plan to prioritize diversity with the ongoing defunding of resources on campus?
So I guess I would push back a little bit about ongoing defunding. We continue to support our multicultural resource centers and also multicultural retention services and the global diversity and inclusion. So if you look at, for example, a trend line over the past 10 years, we've been building those resources and building the support systems. At the same time, we are facing a declining budget and also declining enrollment. So we have to, balance our budget needs across many different areas, across the academic areas, the student support areas, as well as just the basic administrative functions that keep the campus safe, clean, and the employees well supported.
Well, with the budget cuts, how will there still be resources left available if resource centers are being the funding is being cut off?
Well, we're not cutting off the funding for resource centers. That's not in any plan, and I can't foresee the strategic plan suggesting that would be a good idea, since we are in the process of becoming a more diverse campus and wanting to embrace all different identities more. We just opened, for example, a Dreamer Center, and we just opened a Manasa Center this year. So I think it's not correct to say, at least on a per student basis, that our support of these is declining.
Well, with the support of diversity and inclusion, I notice a lot of signs on campus and along with a lot of advertising that it's only in English and not in other languages spoke on campus, like Spanish and another among of language on campus. Do you plan having more languages included in school curriculum, advertising, posters?
Well, that's a good, interesting question. We have begun to include much more Spanish language recruitment events and tours and things like that when prospective students come to campus. And as our needs increase in that way, I could foresee us using more, especially Spanish, but because that's the biggest growing population. So yeah, if the need is there, I think we could look into that.
If our diversity is so high right now, then I'm pretty sure that it is needed because there is a higher population of Hispanic students and also BIPOC students. And also with Spanish not being the only language, there's a lot of Arabic speakers as well on campus. And so how do you plan on incorporating to make those groups feel more included?
Yeah, so I don't have any plans there. I would be very open to discussing that, though, with students, and if they have specific needs.
All right. So the Vanguard and the Sentinel have recently been made aware of possible plans to unceremoniously cut the Intensive English Language Program, or the IELP, which is a vital resource for the academic success of international students at the end of this year. Since PSU is an institution that claims to value diversity, what is the reasoning behind ending programs like the IELP?
So the IELP has had declining enrollment since 2015. We now only have 30 enrolled PSU students and 11 faculty members. So it is a very highly subsidized area by the rest of the campus and by student tuition and our other sources of revenue. So it is unfortunate, but we haven't been able to turn that around. So for example, we've tried making it more sustainable at a couple of different times in the last 6 years, 9 years, 2015 to 2024, that's 9. And we've also injected additional investments into it in order to try to beef up its enrollment and its ability to sustain itself. But instead, it has just become less and less sustainable. So although that learning English is certainly an important thing, and we want to help support our students in that, we're going to have to find resources off campus to help our students, the fewer students who need that to access the support. But we're very dedicated, committed to finding ways to help our students who need support in English language to get it here in Portland.
And since the program is ending at the end of this academic year, are there any current plans for substitutions in place right now?
We are in the middle of negotiating the change, and so I can't really comment on where we're going, but we will be able to announce that later in the term for sure.
Okay.
Going back to diversity, equity, and inclusion, by getting rid of this program, what would you say on an international basis that we are welcoming to international students if we're getting rid of programs like IELP that are supposed to be welcoming an immersion to these students, and not just international students, but multilingual students as well?
Yeah, well, again, the enrollment has dropped so much that it's a clear indication that there's less and less desire for these programs. We've been trying to build the enrollments, and in fact, they've been dropping. So it is a bit out of our control, and it does show a declining, not an increasing, but a declining need or interest in the services. So what we're going to do is we're going to find similar kinds of programs. There are other colleges around here, other programs that our students can engage in. So they will still have the support, but it just won't be through Portland State.
As someone who is biracial and Indigenous, I notice the Native American Center remains eerily empty most times. Are there plans to make more use out of the center on campus that can provide resources for BIPOC students and create a safe space for activism that actively supports Indigenous people and goes beyond a land acknowledgement?
We're very proud of our Native American Student and Community Center, and it is staffed. It is, it has a good following, I think. And we welcome Native American groups to use it and to and others, not just Native American groups. It's such a beautiful space that is also sometimes rented out by other groups, and we welcome that as well.
Well, if the Native American Center is there to serve Indigenous students, why is the name of the center itself only acknowledging North American Indigenous students?
I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. I didn't name it, and I'm not sure exactly what the history of it is. So that's a nice question.
Do you feel that this can bring a narrative that we're not welcoming to non-North American Indigenous people to PSU?
Well, certainly that wasn't the intention, so I'm not sure if that's the case. Do you feel that way?
In a way, because there are more Indigenous people than just in North America, and I feel like on an international basis, especially if wanting to include more diversity and inclusion, that by renaming the Native American Center to possibly something like Indigenous People Center or Indigenous Student Center, I think that would be a lot more inclusive and would make a lot more non-North American Indigenous students feel seen on campus.
That's an interesting perspective. So we do have the Indigenous Traditional Ecological and Cultural Knowledge program, which begins with Indigenous rather than that. And I know that their focus is very global. So it's, and the New Vernier Science Center, for instance, is going to have Indigenous Nation Studies And they're specifically designed by Indigenous students to make it possible to like live stream programming around the world with other Indigenous cultures. So I think we are recognizing, in various ways, the interplay and connection among Indigenous communities around the world.
The recent bomb threat at the Native American Center was highly traumatizing for many students, especially Indigenous students like myself. Can you speak to any details of this incident and how you plan to support the impacted students, staff, and community?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It's so that I can speak to that. So on February 16th, a caller reported a bomb located inside the Native American Student and Community Center and disrupted a welcome event for transfer students. Our campus police responded immediately and evacuated the building. The threat was determined to be a hoax, and the case was passed on to the FBI for further investigation. After the event concluded, Massey College Dean Joseph Bull, whose group was being welcomed, communicated with those impacted, including our Indigenous students, so you must have gotten an email from him, and staff in the Massey College building, offering support and a connection to those members in our community who may have questions. I know there were a number of events afterwards meant to repair and from that event, and I'm very sorry that it happened. It was egregious. Of course, it's a violation of federal law to make such a threat, and we're certainly investigating. So.
With the seriousness of this threat, would you say, with especially global events right now, that Indigenous students have a larger risk for safety on campus right now?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't have said that, but perhaps you feel that way. Yeah.
So the so the emergency alert that went out during that incident appeared to have some kind of glitch, and multiple messages went out with completely unclear information about the specifics of the emergency and its location. Can you speak as to why this may have happened?
Sure. So during the bomb threat, an emergency alert system was used to notify the community of the risk. Some groups received the alert more than once, and others received it with a delay. So that was to be precise about the problems. University Communications is now working with CPSO and the Office of Information Technology to resolve any remaining issues and ensure our campus is appropriately notified in the instance of any future threat.
Okay. And the usual CPSO campus timely warnings sent out during any safety incidents on campus often come long after the incident has taken place, sometimes several hours. So what is the purpose of this emergency alert system if it doesn't really keep students informed on how to stay safe in the moment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, again, we're working on being more timely and more clear about incidents using this system. The system, has evolved the technology, and we're catching up to it. And I think, that the bomb threat incident did show us some of the, clear lapses in the way that we use the system. So going forward, we're a continuously learning institution, and going forward, I think we'll be doing a better job.
Since the last press conference, when you cited safety concerns as the primary reason behind the continuing arming of CPSO officers, has your position on this matter changed?
So I don't recall exactly what I said, but I don't think it has. So let me say that, I meet with Chief Halliburton pretty regularly. Safety is a really important concern. And I also meet with UPSOC as well. And I think that we are doing a good job of safety on campus right now. We have, you know, the ability for round-the-clock coverage, which is really great. Haven't always had that, so I'm pleased to say that we have that. We have added student ambassadors. We have 10 student ambassadors as well, safety ambassadors, and we're looking to hire more. That's an increase in our safety presence. We also have 10 officers and 5 public safety officers. You know, one of the things that I've been pleased to watch is how well the CPSO uses de-escalation techniques. I know that, for example, there was an incident in which they were able to disarm someone using a taser rather than lethal force, which was great. But still, they go into many situations right now where there are people who are armed. And so I think at this point, I agree with the chief that he feels that it's not safe to be disarmed at this point.
Given that many students, particularly BIPOC students, feel unsafe with CPSO officers being armed, how do you plan to balance the safety of CPSO officers with the safety and comfort of all students?
Yeah. Yep, so we have continuing conversations about this and continually monitoring that balance. And also, I think that the CPSO is doing a good job of just trying to be as friendly and welcoming to our students, all of our students, as possible to try to mitigate that feeling of not being safe.
Okay, so we gave students the opportunity before this conference to submit some questions, and we'll read off the others in a bit, but an overwhelming amount of students asked questions about the Boeing situation and how there have been moves to ask for the divestment of Boeing, from the university. And so here's an accumulation of what they wrote to ask you about this topic. All right, and this was written by a student. Us students here at PSU have asked for a divestment from companies such as Boeing and Leopold & Stevens since 2016. Every year, the PSU Board of Trustees and overall administration have avoided, ignored, and pushed off student demands and concerns regarding Boeing. There are students identifying with the Global South whose families, loved ones, and culture are actively harmed by the weaponry Boeing manufactures. You, as the new PSU president, have the opportunity to work with the student body, government, and administration to effectively divest from Boeing and still allow students work experience with companies that are not contributing to war crimes. You have the ability to listen to the community you claim to serve and answer our 8-year-long demand. Will you take it? When is enough? When will you listen to your students and genuinely engage with the PSU community who have been fighting for divestment with Boeing for 8 years?
Okay. So, you know, I would say that I have heard the students. I have talked with the student body president about this on multiple occasions. I've also talked with you, Alyssa, on this. We've heard the student complaint, we've considered it, and we are not changing our policy or our relationship with Boeing. Our relationship with Boeing, let me just be very clear about what it is. They've donated $150,000 to the School of Business to name a classroom in the Carl Miller Center. They give us about $28,000 a year for scholarships and for hardship funds, for emergency funds for students. There is one executive from Boeing who sits on the advisory board for the School of Business, which is, by the way, not a fiduciary board. The School of Business and the Massey College of Engineering and Computer Science have well into hundreds of alums who work for Boeing between their offices in Portland and in Everett, Washington. PSU has no direct investment in Boeing and owns no stock in the company. Our connection is in the students who apply for internships or who are employed by Boeing. So it is all very voluntary on the part of any student who accepts an internship, a scholarship, or employment from Boeing. We've also heard from some alumni now who work at Boeing and have had internships while they were students at PSU. The feedback from them is just resoundingly positive from those students who've benefited from this connection. For example, a student studying accounting was struggling in the program and looking for a pathway that she had some sort of passion for. At a career fair, she met a representative from Boeing and learned about their supply chain program. She wasn't familiar with Boeing before the career fair, but after applying for and earning an internship, she credits her incredible experience as a student with her career path and the foundation for a wealth of opportunity to learn. She points now to the work Boeing is doing to remove barriers for students who may not traditionally be able to accept internships outside of Portland, including paying for relocation and housing during their internship. And then another example is this. Another student spoke of her Boeing internship as key to earning a position after graduation with Boeing and the opportunity to learn about different facets of the company in different locations that she may not have had the chance to otherwise. She said Boeing is extremely supportive of their interns and helping them to learn. This student's internship was her first professional experience, and she was able to apply her PSU education to real-world business projects for the first time in that internship. So what we're hearing from students who take advantage of the opportunities offered by Boeing is resoundingly positive. These are the kinds of opportunities of real work experience that we want our students to have. It's real paid internships, so students can forego working while they intern for Boeing and still be learning at the same time. So we regard Boeing as a company that's doing great work with us as an educational institution, and we don't really see any reason to stop that. There is no policy that that they are violating in terms of PSU policy, and so we've decided that despite the fact that some students would prefer us not to do business with Boeing, we will continue to accept their support of our students. And any student is, of course, free to not accept that support if they want.
Okay. So at the Board of Trustees meeting on January 26, the Vanguard captured multiple videos of CPSO officers using force to push and shove protesters. Do you feel the measures they took that day were justified?
So the January 26th protest did turn violent very quickly. The protesters were using megaphones close to the heads and ears of the people in the room, which is pretty painful. When the board was unable to get them to stop disrupting the meeting, the board decided we decided to leave, to exit and to resume on Zoom, to resume the meeting. The protesters tried to push their way onto the elevator, and at that point a police officer did have to restrain that person to keep them from, that person did also have the bullhorn in their hand, had to restrain that person from molesting the board members. So that was one of the incidents that I'm sure you caught on film. The others were, what happened after that, of course, is that the protesters followed the board members to the next location. They entered the building. They followed them up to where we were going to resume the meeting, and they pounded on the walls and pounded holes in the walls. They scratched the surface of the glass wall that was between us and them. They created a lot of noise for over an hour, creating a lot of fear on the part of the employees who were on the other side of the glass walls, who had nothing to do with either the protest or what was going on with the board. So really, it was quite an egregious situation. And then when the board members were some of them were trying to drive out of the parking garage, they tried to keep the cars from, they tried to put themselves in the way so that they couldn't leave. So these are actually, these were things that our police officers tried as hard as they could to restrict their, touching anybody. But when the protesters were insisting on pushing forward, then they had to push back. So yes, just to shorten the answer now, is to yes, they were certainly using the least force possible to keep people safe and to prevent further violence.
Mm-hmm. Well, with so many students that day and at other protests and other meetings they've been speaking so strongly about how uncomfortable and unsafe they feel with the school's relationship with Boeing. I mean, don't you think that seeing these sorts of actions and the passion of these students and how much it makes them unsafe to have a relationship with Boeing, don't you think that may give an opportunity for you to reevaluate the ties to Boeing from this university?
So I would push back against this word safe. I don't see how anybody could feel unsafe because Boeing is providing hardship funds or scholarship funds to students. That seems like an extreme exaggeration of the concept of safety. So I would say it's not unsafe. I can see that there's a political disagreement between Boeing and these students, I guess. Although I would say that there's probably lots and lots of other companies that one could equally, it does seem a little arbitrary to me to choose Boeing, but there you go. But anyway, so I guess I would say, I haven't seen any logical reason to rethink this relationship with Boeing. And I would also say that, the protesters are free to, first of all, to peacefully protest, not disrupt in the meetings. We have no problem with that. They can bring signs, they can sit in the room. We also have no problem with them speaking to the board. They're free to do so. They have not asked to do so. And so they have not presented an argument. They've simply said, we feel strongly that you should divest from Boeing. I mean, and they haven't even said that. They've just shown that through their actions. So there's been no argument. There's been no explanation. I've received no argument or explanation from, for example, the student body president, who has simply repeated basically what you say, which is that the students don't want Boeing here.
Okay. So in what ways is the university allowing students to voice disdain for the school's actions and actively taking steps to address those concerns?
So again, we're totally in favor of free speech. We're totally in favor of protest. We help students learn how to do protests peacefully and civilly. We have a student life organizations that mentor students in this way. So I think there's no dearth of opportunities for students to make their views known. They could also, I suppose, write a blog or make some explanation. Again, I've heard no explanation really of the opposition to Boeing, other than, well, they make planes and drones that are used by, national defense that then end up killing people. And that's true, but, there are a lot of things that are used by governments and that end up killing people. Why this? Why not that? I've heard no logical explanation of why Boeing, why now, why 8 years ago. I simply hear from the students and again from the protesters just, we want you to stop. So, you know, this is an academic institution. We're all about inquiry and dialogue and debate. I'd love to have that. That's not what we're getting. We're getting violent protest.
All right. So the recent demonstration, I guess, at the January 26th Board of Trustees meeting, that demonstration was being characterized as unlawful and destructive. So how, I guess, do you define a protest as unlawful or destructive, just to be clear?
Yeah, so assaulting somebody or obstructing vehicles in public roadways, or causing damage to buildings, causing, you know, making holes in walls, you know, creating other kinds of damage, graffitiing bathrooms. Those are all examples of destruction and damage.
Okay.
So I would like to touch back on the Boeing situation, because this does tie into the question I will be answering that was submitted by a student. Your answer to the Boeing situation with no valid argument, I would just like to say, as an Indigenous person, with what Boeing supports right now and who they're supporting right now, and with us accepting donation money from Boeing, for me, and I can't speak for all Indigenous students, it just feels like we're accepting blood money in sort of a way, because this is contributing to mass genocide of Indigenous people. And with us accepting donations from an organization that is giving all of these weaponry and aircrafts to, how do you feel that it's ethical to accept these donations when you know that they are contributing to this genocide?
So, first of all, I'm really sorry that you feel that way, and I feel, you know, it's a tragic situation that's going on, and like every decent person in the world, I wish for peace, and I wish for there not to be people being killed. So let me say that, and you know, the situation with Boeing, though, well, I've really, you know, answered, I guess, as much as I can why our position is that we will not change our relationship with that company.
Do you find that ethical?
Yeah, yeah. That's a long discussion, perhaps, that we would need to have for me to explain why support of transnational capitalism is ethical. But basically, that's what I think is at stake here. So it's arbitrary to choose Boeing, I believe. There are many other companies. I mean, why not Intel, for example? They make the chips that make the Boeing planes work or the drones work. So, you know, I could go on. I mean, there are many, many different kinds of things that you could look at. On the other hand, well, I'll just stop there.
I was going to say, well, with our university's commitment to diversity and inclusion, and like what you're saying, we're such a helpful university to the BIPOC community, especially with the work on trying to help Indigenous people. It just feels like, in a way, that this is contradicting that, because you are accepting this money from a place that is actively and is still contributing to an Indigenous genocide. And so what would that say as us as a university? Are we using the diversity and equity and inclusion as an advertising sort of scheme, or are we actually going to speak to our word and take actions towards this actual diversity than accepting essentially blood money from a company that is contributing to mass genocide?
So you're using lots of interesting rhetorical devices to make this seem much more extreme than it actually is. I guess you could say that, you know, all of transnational capitalism should be ended in order to do this. But that would have also many other repercussions that would also be very harmful to many people. So, you know, rather than going to a long conversation, which would be fun, but I don't have time for that here, and I don't think you have time for it here, but to engage in a long debate about the morality of capitalism. I think I'll just have to say that we've considered this. It's not violating our policies. We're an academic institution. We're trying to help people get an education, and that should be our main concern.
I would feel that it does violate the inclusion policy because there are Palestinian students at PSU, and with, like I said, what's going on overseas right now, it's like, does that mean Palestinian students don't matter because we're still accepting this money and we're not including Indigenous diversity other than just North American Indigenous people?
Certainly not meant to send that message.
So I'm going to go into my next question since I said this does tie in. Several PSU students and alumni asked the questions along the lines of, why has PSU not released a statement about the devastation being wrought on by Palestine by Israel? Why has there not been called for a ceasefire by the university?
Yeah, so we're an academic institution, and we are, pretty much neutral on political matters because we have people on all sides. And what we want to do is generate debate and dialogue. We want to generate inquiry and not chill speech. So any, professors are free to teach about these issues, make statements about these issues. So are all, students, faculty, staff. They have free speech in their normal lives to do that. But anybody speaking for the institution should not be taking sides on foreign policy issues or political matters that are controversial among the students and the faculty and the staff and the community.
So with the lack of university representation calling for ceasefires, would you think that it could be a good idea to call for a ceasefire, because then that would put us as like a university being like, we want war and violence to stop on all sides, because a ceasefire just doesn't include one side, it includes both. And so when it comes to the politics, a ceasefire in general would just be stopping all sorts of arms and violence in general on both sides. And so I think as a university, with like the lack of everybody else speaking on this, I think it would be important to voice that, because if we are against violence, I think the right thing would be to call ceasefire, because for the safety of Jewish people and also Palestinian people.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, I'm in favor of peace, absolutely.
Then why haven't you called a ceasefire?
Well, again, I don't want to make a political matter, political statement out of this. And as I think you know, and this is why you're asking the question, calling for a ceasefire is taking a stand on one side of the issue. So although, I have a personal opinion, I'm not going to give my personal opinion about the political matter. What's, I think, most important is that I remain politically neutral in my role as president, or insofar as I'm speaking for the university.
But then what does that, what then?
Asked and answered. I think, you're going to just continue to have me say basically the same things. I don't think I'm going to have anything new to say. So I think we ought to move on from this issue.
Okay. Going to my next question, unfortunately it is slightly similar. Several PSU students and parents ask questions along the lines of, what is PSU doing to ensure Jewish students and community members feel safe and accepted on campus?
So the dialogue, or the Building Community Through Dialogue Task Force is meant to exactly address these issues. And so, we have people from all sides on that, community members as well. We're hoping that, that helps us to see more clearly what policies we might need or what practices we might need in order to help people feel safer and prevent violations of their civil rights.
One PSU student asked, can you commit to being 100% transparent and honest about where our tuition is going, what it's being put towards, and why we do not see a change in amenities or benefits from year to year despite increased tuition?
I am endeavoring to be as transparent as possible. And you know, transparency is an interesting word, and it's difficult to achieve everybody's upvote on transparency. And I think mainly because it's a communication issue. And so in a very large and complex organization, not everybody hears everything all the time. But we're trying to do better on that, and that's why this is a great opportunity for me to try to be more communicative to the whole group. As far as, you know, tuition increases go, we, you know, for the most part, our tuition is, you know, lower than in-state tuition, lower than other the other big universities in the state. We try to stay within those bounds. We have a student fee committee who talks to us about student fees and sets recommendations for student fees. That's very transparent. They look into the, you know, under the hood of everything that is funded by the fees. We have budget forums in which we try to, you know, give as much information as the community wants on budget. We're a state university. Our books are open. People can find where money is going. Part of the question, though, has to do with allocation, right? So not just transparency, knowing where it's going, but how are the decisions made for allocating for this rather than that. And that's what our budget forums are meant to help people weigh in about. Naturally, there are different, you know, everybody will advocate for their own need or their own interest or their own unit. And we have to, you know, together as a community balance that. We're trying to do that right now with the strategic planning going on. We're trying to get a really, you know, broad-based consensus about that strategic plan so that we can use that to align the budget, to make these kind of allocation decisions that, you know, determine where, you know, what kinds of amenities we might have or support systems or academic programs.
Another PSU student asked, can you clarify why the food carts by the library are being evicted?
I understand it has to do with city code, but I'm not an expert on that.
Well, according to the city, it would cost approximately 10 to 15K to install gray water drains in that location. If the student and local community fundraised a portion of that money, would PSU be willing to match that contribution?
So, okay, so you have more information than I do about about the code issue. You know, I haven't looked into it, but certainly don't want the carts to go away. So, you know, I'm open to different solutions.
All right, I guess that's all the time we have. So thank you everyone for joining us for the press conference, and thank you President Cudd for taking the time to speak with us. And have a great day, everybody,
Okay.
I guess.
Thank you, Alyssa and Shaelee. Appreciate this opportunity.